Hello and welcome to Brand Film Live, the very first episode where you can get the exclusive insights on crafting branded content from experts in storytelling and marketing. I'm your host, Alexis Wierenga, producer for the Brand Film Workshop, brought to you by PRWeek and Campaign US. Joining me today are the editorial minds behind these leading industry brands. First, we have Steve Barrett, Editorial Director for PRWeek. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing well, Alexis. Yeah, nice to be on the show. Nice to be a guest for a change, not the interviewer.
Different change of pace.
Absolutely.
And we also have Lindsay Stein, editor for Campaign US. How are you, Lindsay?
I'm great. You have quite a title.
Do I?
Editorial Director.
Well, I've been around a long time, Lindsay. You stay somewhere long enough, you float up to a job title like that.
All right, so today we're going to dive into the Brand Film Awards, which Lindsay and Steve have been a part of from the beginning. This year, 2020, is the 5th annual edition of this premier event honoring brand films, and it's coming up on May 7th in New York. And we are just announcing that Corey Bayers, the Global VP of Marketing at Patagonia, will be helming the judging for the 2020 awards, which will showcase the year's most artistic and powerful storytelling through branded content films. And before we break down what makes these projects so powerful for a brand, I want to remind you to submit your work by Wednesday, January 22nd for the chance to be honored as a leader in this new wave of marketing storytelling. You can submit your content at brandfilmlive.com. The link is in the description. And you can also register for the interactive workshop at that same link. So to kick it off, I'll start with you, Steve. How did the Brand Film Awards originate?
Yeah, it came about really when we were out there talking to people in the industry, and as you know, all the marketing disciplines are merging and converging. So what people in advertising do and what they do in marketing, in digital, in PR, is converging on the same space, and that's because TV advertising is not the be-all and end-all. We'll talk about that a bit more later. So we were out there doing our annual agency review, and people were talking about this, how the PR firms were creating brand films for their clients and creating stories and narratives and doing the sort of work they probably wouldn't have done 5 or 10 years before. So it just came out as an idea and something that we could really do across our brands, across Campaign and PRWeek, and that would be just as relevant for both brands and other disciplines as well. Medical marketing and media is just one of our other brands is just as relevant. So that's really how it happened about 5 years ago. That it was just felt like the right time to do it. We'd done a bunch of stories about brand films and some excellent activations, and we felt like there wasn't a festival out there to celebrate just brand films. So we thought let's invent one, and off we went. And it went pretty well, I think.
Yeah. Lindsay, how does Brand Film connect Campaign to PRWeek? What's the benefit of having this partnership of hosting the awards?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to step back. I think I still have the original document from when we had an idea for Brand Film Festival back in the day.
Yeah, because actually, Lindsay, you worked on PRWeek at the time, in the good old days,
Yes.
the A-team, the glory days, before you went off to, was it Ad Age? And we shunned you, but then we got you back to edit Campaign. We're really pleased about that, obviously.
I literally think I still have that doc where we were talking about how this would be a great idea.
Yeah, and you came up with the ideas for the categories.
That's right.
For the initial festival. So
which have evolved for sure, which I know we'll talk about later.
But it was great. It was good fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think with brand film, like you said, it could be PR driven. I mean, you have like Weber Shandwick doing some amazing content, even though they're not traditional ad agency, right? And then obviously on the creative side, from the Campaign, we cover more of the creative and media side of the business. I mean, there's so many agencies. Every agency, I think, is creating some amazing sort of content, and almost anything could be considered a film today because the quality is so great. Even on your own phone, like the quality could be that good.
Yeah, that's important to recognize that a brand film could be 10 seconds long. I remember when Vine, do you remember Vine?
I used to love Vine.
Yeah,
now
they
it's
were
TikTok,
doing was it Lowe's? Doing those little
they were the
5-second
first one,
films. So that's a brand film for me, and they were fantastic. Yeah. And actually, we wrote about them, but it could be a 90-minute documentary as well, or a series of programs or episodes, just like a piece of content. So, and I think the other thing that really made it fly was social media, because the channels had really developed, Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, and all those ways of getting content out there that you didn't have to go to a TV channel to put it out there. You can just publish it yourself. And so that helped make it fly as well.
And it's interesting that nobody's thought of this until now, because even if you look at the Cannes festival, right? Like BMW Films, which was years ago, a couple of decades ago even, it created the Titanium Lion, and that was called BMW Films. It was a series.
Right,
Changed the whole industry.
Yep. So that's why we did it, and
There we
5 years later, I think it's changed a lot. We'll talk about that a bit more, but that was the real sort of genesis of it.
Well, as you guys are saying, there's such a wide umbrella. Are there certain guidelines you have to separate it from this is just a normal commercial and this is a brand film? Is it the quality? Where does it come into?
Ooh, that's a tough one because it can vary.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Alexis, because I blogged about that this morning, and you can check out my blog on PRWeek.com. So go and have a look at it. But yeah, when we first started, it was a case of what is a brand film and how is it different from an advertisement? Because some people still call brand films advertisements. But I think an advertisement is very upfront about promoting a product, and the product's front and center, and it's all about, it's usually 30 seconds long, not always, but that's the classic form. And that is very different to a brand film where the brand will take more of a back seat, and in fact, the best brand films don't push the product right up front because it gets in the way of the storytelling, and it's just not part of the narrative. You can have a brand, flavor to it without actually pushing the brand forward front and center. Whereas an advertisement it's upfront selling, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it is hard though, right? Because the new Apple spot, I don't know if either of you have seen that. The holiday spot. It was 90 seconds, not on TV, but the normal film. I would call it a film. It's beautiful.
Should get them to enter it, Lindsay, into the Brand Film Awards.
I can.
Brandfilmalive.com.
It's submission still open. January 22nd.
I chose it as out of the week a while ago. It's amazing. It's beautifully done, but it's definitely promoting their iPad, but it's promoting how you can create on it and stuff like that, and you get so into the story, forget that it's an ad because it's like a 90-second story.
Yeah, I do think there's still a discussion about that. Do you remember that? Is it John Lewis?
Yeah.
The UK retailer, which did that great drumming film before the holidays. I love that. But to me, that's an ad because they're really pushing the product.
I would say it's a Christmas ad, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the John Lewis brand wasn't pushed right at you. So it's almost like actually brand films are kind of informing advertising now as well. But I think the fundamental change is the fact that viewing habits have changed, right? I don't know, do you watch TV? How much do you watch TV? And when the ads come on, what do? Do you watch them? Do you
fast forward?
I watch them, but it's also my job.
That's kind of your job, yeah. But I mean, your generation doesn't. Either they don't own a TV, right? Or you're watching everything on catch up and you'll fast forward. Or if you are live, you'll mute it and you'll play on your phone. You'll be using your phone. So straightforward paid advertising, whilst billions of dollars are still spent on it, and it does work, right? We on medical marketing and media, actually, we did a big feature last year about how actually spend is increasing on pharmaceutical ads, on traditional TV ads, but that's a very heavily regulated industry, and it's harder for them to do storytelling in this brand film space. But in general, you've seen all the launch of all these new streaming services, Netflix, Disney, you've got Apple, and getting ready to launch there. So these are all new forms of accessing content and information, and eventually the paid ad is going to go away, right? So in its place will come more. Lindsay might not agree with that.
Discuss right now.
Over to you.
It's a whole other conversation. But what about TikTok even? Like new social platforms, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so a TikTok activation could
category
be
next year.
Yeah, look, a brand film can be a short form, like we said earlier. Can be it's not about the platform. It's about the story and how it's distributed, and sort of broadcast is not necessarily the most important thing. So, but your friend Gary Vaynerchuk, he has an interesting opinion on this, doesn't he? He says he's always saying that advertising is kind of TV ads are not dead, but he says they're very overpriced.
Well, they are, except he will say that you should do the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
he says they're overpriced, but he says if you are going to go in and do it big and buy big and go around the big must-view events because that's where TV still is an appointment to view for big live events like the Super Bowl or the Oscars or sports events.
So are you seeing these trends just in the 5 years that this festival and awards has been happening? Do you see changes, the brand films evolving? Like you said, you evolved the categories. Can I take that one?
You start. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first year there was still quite clunky activations where all of a sudden the brand would appear in the middle of the film, right?
Okay, yeah, like Chipotle.
For no particular reason. Well, you'd have to argue with Jay Goodman about that.
No, I was going to say Chipotle was the first one that did it well, I think.
Yeah, that
back
was...
in like 2000 and, God, I don't even know, 2000...
That was
actually,
it was one of the first ones. I think it was United Entertainment.
Yeah.
Was it? No, that was CAA.
They called it unbranded.
Film? Yeah, that was a good one, and actually Chipotle won that music activation that Jay Goodman's agency Observatory, or I think it might have been at CAA at that point, did. But yeah, so you'd all of a sudden have the brand like dumped in the middle of the film, or you'd have a brand spokesperson all of a sudden would appear, and you're like, hang on, what's going on here? This doesn't really fit. And I think it's evolved now, and people understand better the way to put your brand in or not. And the way, so that I'd say that's the biggest difference, that the craft has changed. But having said that, right, I mentioned this in my blog, and you mentioned the BMW films. That was probably the first big brand film, and that was in 2001, right? So. And that was pre-broadband. You probably don't even remember that, right? Dial-up modems to get on the internet.
I grew up on that. That was my teenage years, taking up the phone line.
But people had to download a film overnight, right, to watch it. So, but they still got 100 million views of that. And it was a proper Hollywood-style production with Clive Owen in it. And actually, in the 15th year, we featured The Escape, which was the follow-up to the first film, which was The Hire. And Clive Owen came back for that, and Dakota Fanning, I think, was in it. And that was just a great Hollywood-style film where the car's part of the film, but it's part of the action. It's almost part, the car's the star, actually, but it's not like in your face, right, come and buy the car. It's just a part of the action, in the same way that another great film that I really liked was Lifeline by Qualcomm. And that was actually Armando Bo, who's an Oscar-winning screenwriter, and he directed that film for Qualcomm. That was a 30-minute thriller. It's filmed in Shanghai, I think. It had famous actors in the lead roles. But that was where the Qualcomm is kind of the inner workings of the mobile cell phone. So the cell phone was kind of part of the plot. It was a thriller, a mystery thriller. But so the product's in there, and it's kind of a character again, but it's not like in your face, buy our phone. So those were a couple of great examples, I think, of films that really work well. And
then last year we had AR, right? Or was that new for last year?
Yeah, we've done VR and AR for a couple of years, and that is an emerging area, augmented reality, AI, virtual reality, and it's still early stages for that, and we'll see how that develops. Yeah. And obviously, it's harder to watch those films live in a cinema. But that's something that we'll see how that develops, and also artificial intelligence and how that will impact filmmaking and communications of all types.
You guys have spoken about things maybe being a little too obvious, or someone coming out and talking about their product. Is there a danger to being too subtle, or do you think maybe that serves a brand reputation in the end?
I definitely so it's so interesting, right? Because you could talk about this even with regular advertising, because I'll talk to my mom on the phone and she'll be like, oh my God, did you see that commercial with, da-da-da-da? And I'll be like, oh yeah. And she's like, I love that ad. I'm like, what brand was it for? And she's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's great that they know the spot, but also the job is to sell products, right? It is all about brand reputation as well, and I think Procter & Gamble does a really great job at some of their more branded house P&G, like the look or the talk, or their Black
moms
is Beautiful,
P&G
Olympics. Moms. Yeah, that type of stuff I think is for reputation.
But
you do have to know that it's P&G.
Reputation is part of selling stuff as well.
It is,
You've got to have a good brand that people want to buy into, especially young people. But to your point, I think the measurement question always crops up with earned media and with owned media, which is what I would call this. And you do have to justify your marketing budgets. And I actually, looking back for this blog I wrote this morning, PRWeek.com, the VP of marketing at BMW said that that brand film was the best thing they'd ever done in terms of effectiveness. It was the best investment they'd ever made. And they still have fans of BMW today from those films. So that is creating brand loyalty, it's creating interest in the cars, it's creating an affinity with the brand, and that converts into sales. So it is probably a little bit harder to measure that impact, because when you have an ad that shows, they can apparently, you can talk more to this, track the measurement and the uplift in sales, at least by the measurement that's agreed with the industry. So maybe it is an easier thing to do with straightforward advertising, although I would contest that those measurement. But they know when an ad's runs and that they get a spike in sales for sure.
Yeah. No, I think it's hard to tell sometimes with a brand film if it's not a traditional spot. You're not going to put a 90-minute film on TV, right? Was it HP,
they did
though?
Actually with Breaking 2.
Was that
Nike?
HP?
That was,
right.
I think it was Nat Geo, National Geographic.
They've done some amazing.
That was a 90-minute documentary about breaking the 2-hour marathon time limit, and Nike. It was a Nike film. Again, it's not about Nike shoes, although obviously the shoes are part of the plot. And actually, funnily enough, they didn't break it. They just missed by about 10 seconds, and they only finally broke 2
That's right.
before the holidays. But actually, I thought it was possibly more effective because people were criticizing the way they set that up, and it wasn't a proper race. It was very much, they had pace runners the whole time. And actually, by just missing out, it almost made that Breaking 2 film more compelling because
more authentic.
More authentic because they didn't quite reach their goal. So that's an example of a program, a 90-minute film that was very compelling.
And I think it depends on what the metric is, right? Because if you're a nonprofit, and I would say some of my favorites from last year's brand film were in the nonprofit category. Obviously, your goal is either to stop bullying or like get more people to talk about mental health issues. So it really depends. It's not all about sales. It's also about what your KPIs are. Like the yearbook one last year, the Honest Yearbook was really good. The Ad Council does a ton of those. I think that was with TD,
the Ad Council.
I think. Yeah,
actually even won a PRWeek award
wow.
for the immigration piece. But that's a big trend. Cause and purpose related films are very prevalent and very popular in this space, and that is definitely noticeable when you watch them all back to back in a film festival context. It actually can get a bit wearing because you're so emotionally sort of engaged.
Pulls at the heartstrings.
It really does. Well, it's actually pretty depressing, frankly, if you watch them all back to back like that. But there are some great films. One of my favorites was by a brand called Reef, which is I think it's a surf brand, where they actually took some foster kids to the beach. Kids who'd never been to the beach in their life, and they just filmed their reactions when they saw the beach for the first time. They were inner city kids from around the country. I loved that film, and that was really emotional, nice bit of storytelling. Didn't push the brand. I don't think it pushed the brand at all, but it was based by the sea, and that's where Reef hangs out, and I thought it was a very effective film and very emotional. So that, I think that the purpose area is very suited to brand films, but I'd love to see more entertainment films like the Escape or the Lifeline, or just fun stuff. I think there's room for all genres within this. So if I was thinking about how I'd like to develop over the next 5 years, I'd love to see a lot more fun and entertaining films.
There were some heavy ones for sure last year and the year before, but I would say, well, one, this isn't heavy, but it was so cute. Do you remember the one with the dog, the seeing eye dog?
The Pip.
Yes, it was so cute.
Tongle
oh my God.
Kimchi House.
Adorable. I love
Kimchi
that
Studios.
one. And there's also some really good scary ones. Yeah. It was a candy brand.
That's true. The horror is another genre.
I really like that.
Yeah.
I love horror, so those were fun. But you're right. A lot of times it is really heavy. Even with our own Power Purpose Awards, that campaign, we showed a lot of all the work that won, and it was a lot of gun violence and kind of like really heavy topics, and you want people to walk up and get their award and be excited, but it'd be really heavy. So
but that sort of content does lend itself to so you can't really get those things. You can get them over in a 30-second spot, but it's not as easy. So the PRWeek's Purpose Awards also featured some very compelling activations. No, they were much better and more of them. No, there was a great one in raising awareness of sexual exploitation and kids being abused. With trucks driving around the streets. Very, very compelling piece. And so purpose is a good, definitely a good theme for the past 5 years.
And I think another theme next year, or maybe we'll see in this round of when we're judging. I noticed at Cannes, you probably noticed too, it was a lot of disability focused work, which I think is really amazing, and it should be, because diversity and inclusion has been mainly about just not just, it should
ethnicity
be
ethnicity
and gender,
not
but
so much disability.
Tommy Hilfiger did their campaign last year for their new clothing line for people with autism, because they don't have the same amount of dexterity in their fingers, and Microsoft did its adaptive controller. I feel like we're going to see more and more, maybe, with the different types of diversity this year.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, I'm excited. We'll see.
On the spot again, Lindsay.
That's right.
With so many examples of things that have gone well and success stories or great investments, why do you think there's still, people are hesitant? Do you think brand film's still in infancy? Do you think brands are a little bit holding back their budgets a little bit, that the chief financial officers are a little bit more wary?
I think they had a phase where they invested in it, and they did their first iterations, and then they paused. And I think we saw that a couple of years ago. We certainly didn't get as many entries into the festival. I think it came back last year, and I think it's coming back even more now.
Yeah.
So it will go in phases, won't it?
I think the budgets still aren't going to get better, but you have some changes going on the marketing side, where I think that instead of maybe going to an agency, which is not really great for the agencies, or going directly to production companies, or Mark Pritchard at P&G has been doing partnerships with celebrities, or with Ariana Huffington or John Legend, doing it directly with them.
With the talent.
Right, yeah, rather than, going to an agency. But yeah, that could be one way. I agree. I think it's going to be invested in more, just like brand experience. I think it's going to be invested in more this year.
But it does come back to the measurement issue as well. Yeah. Every dollar now is scrutinized by procurement departments at companies, and they want to know what is the uplift. So measurement is important, right? You can't come with soft metrics. You've got to be able to link the activity to brand impact, to changes in behavior, and to sales at the end of the day, or whatever the objective was, a change in behavior. Maybe it's a political thing, or getting someone to be aware of an issue. So you do have to definitely. Every dollar spent on marketing has to really earn its court.
And do you think, thinking about the value extending just beyond the initial first years, do you think there is a place for brand film to live, like whether it's a streaming service, or is there too much emphasis on streaming services and festivals? Do you think there's other places that, brand people should be looking to keep their branded content relevant?
I think, social for sure. I mean, if you have a good social presence as a brand, if you're fun on social media, people will follow you there.
It's less about the platform and the channel. It's more about just generating the buzz, however you do that. And those channels will change year to year, right? Some will come in and some will fade away. Facebook is probably less crucial than it used to be, but Instagram is more so, and they're owned by the same company. You've got Twitter kind of coming back and making a comeback. You have new channels like TikTok coming in, which has its own issues around censorship, and especially with being a Chinese-owned company which censors products, especially in its home country. You've got new products launching like Quibi, which will come out soon. You've got...
And P&G, again, is investing heavily in that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think those are more the delivery channels and the social channels on which... And LinkedIn, actually, is a very interesting channel. Certainly from a B2B standpoint, and from a content point of view, we get an enormous amount of engagement from LinkedIn. So that's more about the delivery and generating the buzz. But how you generate the buzz is not really, you create the content and then you put it out where it will get the best engagement. And you can't just see it as divorced from everything else you're doing. It's part of an integrated campaign, we talk a lot about PESO. So that's paid, earned, shared, and owned. So paid is your traditional advertising spend, as well as digital ad spend. Earned is your more traditional PR activity. Shared would be the social side of it. And then owned is the brand content. So it's a mixture of all those things now in marketing for brands and organizations to tell their story.
All right. To kind of start to wrap it up, like you said, thinking ahead, you said you'd like to see a little bit more fun. Any other types of brand film content you would like more brands to get involved? Do you think you want to see more partnerships? What would you like to see in the upcoming years?
I think, well, I would like to see this, but I think we will see this too. I think more brand partnerships, like with the Super Bowl, the Bud Light, and Game of Thrones. That was a huge plot twist. Everyone was very excited to see. Like, they're like, is this happening? Is this happening? Is it going to be a Game of Thrones twist? And it was. That, like, you know, people say won the Super Bowl. I feel like you're going to see more brand collaborations because you're going to get more buzz out of that if there's two brands that people really care about.
Yeah, I think so. I just want more fun because I'm a miserable git, and you know we need to bring some fun into Steve's life. But no, only joking. No, I just think that there's. I guess those take a slightly higher budget generally. I mean, the interesting thing about the Escape film and Lifeline was that they were pretty much treated like a normal feature film, right? Mm-hmm. They were made like any other Hollywood film, but that means they had Hollywood budgets, right? Yeah, so, you know, whilst one of the initial drivers of brand films was the fact that you didn't have to buy the media space, which is the most expensive part of the package. So you could, in theory, spend more on the content, invest more in the content. Mm-hmm. But of course, as the years go on, procurement gets a bit of a taste of the dynamics there, and they kind of rein that back in. I'd like to see some of those dollars that are spent on traditional TV ads going into brand films and other forms of media, especially earned. Because I think it's more effective now. So you've got to engage. I think the purpose theme is going to continue. There's no doubt about that. Young people want to know about the brands they're engaging with. They want to know about the companies they might go and work for. They want to know what they believe in. And this is a great way for them to tell, not just externally, but also internally, tell their employees what they believe in. And now internal communications is sort of the first line of external. So that is a great way to use brand film techniques as well.
And touching on what you said, have you seen any good examples of somebody who has really communicated purpose well, but it's been more lighthearted or entertaining and fun and less maybe emotional fatiguing? Is there a way to do that well?
I think it depends on the brand, you know, because it depends on what your brand message is and what the purpose is. Like, that is actually, even for our Power Purpose Awards, Susan Cradle's the Global Chief Creative Officer of FCB, and I did a fireside chat with her before our awards, and she said brand purpose doesn't necessarily mean, you know, saving the world or saving dolphins. It could be that your purpose is to, like, just make people happy or to sell M&Ms and bring joy to the world. So I think it can be just, your purpose could just be to make people happy, and, you know.
Well, I'm looking forward to what Corey brings to the piece. Having someone like Corey as our chair of jury is a big statement. We're so pleased to have him on board because Patagonia is is almost like the gold star in terms of purpose as a brand. It's totally authentic. It's right at the heart of what it does. It always has been, always will be. So I think I'm really looking forward to what Corey will bring to the piece in terms of leadership and chairing the jury and steering the way we look at the festival and the films we pick. So that, you know, that's how that's one of the reasons we went with Corey.
Any, final words of advice for anybody who's thinking about submitting for this round of brand film? Any warnings?
I guess, one thing I would say that I think people forget about is production companies can enter, and I know, like, The Bindery, I think, entered last year, or there are some, like, are pretty...
Anonymous Content is a production company that's done really well over the years of the festival.
But when I was meeting with some production companies a few months ago, they didn't realize that they could enter themselves. So I was like, you can absolutely enter yourselves. So make sure, if you're a production company, you worked on that, you should be able to enter, and you should enter.
Yeah, get work. It's the same with any awards. Get working early, so it's not just a last-minute effort, because you won't be able to put your best foot forward. You do have an extended deadline to the end of January if you need that bit of extra time. Tell a story, in your written submission as well. Don't just let the film stand for itself.
If there are results, I personally love seeing results, and I think that sometimes people forget about that. But yeah, definitely put results in there. Yeah,
creativity is important, but if you can demonstrate the effectiveness from a change of behavior or business results or sales, then that really does. The jury really does get excited about that, but they do get excited about creativity as well, because it's a very creative jury.
And remember, too, if you have something fun, it might earn you favor with Steve. If you have a especially fun piece out there and you're on the fence, you might have a leg up already if you can submit something that will make him laugh.
Anyone around here will tell you, as will Christy and Rena Grace behind the dials, that we got fun up here.
Well, Ollie, my associate editor, and I have this like unofficial tagline where we just say we have fun here. Because we do.
Ollie certainly does on Twitter, that's for sure, but that's a whole other
Yes,
podcast. You probably need a psychologist involved in that discussion, so yeah.
All right. Well, to wrap things up, I want to remind everyone, once again, get your submissions into brandfilmlive.com. You can also buy your tickets there for the interactive workshop, or if you just want to come and appreciate some great brand films and enjoy the festival and hear from, leaders in this industry, check it out. Thank you to Steve and Lindsay for taking time to talk with me today.
It's a
about
pleasure.
brand film.
Thanks,
I'm
Alexis.
excited for the awards.
Yeah.
Or the
All
film
right.
festival, I should say.
And thank you for tuning in to Brand Film Live.